All right, looks like the majority of folks are in and ready to go. I want to say be the first here to welcome everyone to our State of the Department here with our athletics director Andy Fee. Thank you all for taking the time to come and watch this with us. Um, First off, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Dignity Health. They, of course, have been a big sponsor of beach athletics for a long time, and we're glad to have them on board. And then I wanted to set a few rules here and just kind of let folks know how it's going to go. There is a chat function. So if you'd like to ask the athletic director any questions so that we don't get any feedback and noise from other folks, we've got everyone on mute. So please send the questions to us and we will answer them as best we can throughout the presentation. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our athletic director, Andy Fee.
Thanks, Camden, and LB Nation. Good evening. Thanks for everybody making time to join this virtual town hall. This is the first virtual town hall that we're hosting, and we'll probably be doing this a number of times here through the summer as we move forward. But first and foremost, thank you to Dignity Healthcare for the sponsor, for being a sponsor and being so great with our university and our athletic department. And we can't say thank you enough. But I hope that you and your loved ones are staying healthy and safe. During these unparalleled times. I've said it before. It's something that I never ever thought would come across my desk, so to speak. So I appreciate the support many of you have shown, whether it's been through a call or a text or donations that you all provide as boosters to the programs here, and engaging with our beach athletics online. Know that this unwavering commitment is what makes LB Nation so special, and I'm extremely proud of how this community has come together in such a challenging time. And while we're all adjusting to our new daily routines, I want to assure you our department's goals haven't changed, and our team has been extremely busy advancing the mission. We're here to cultivate leaders and champions. That's in the classroom, that's on the field of competition. I talk about it as much as I can, and that's not about me. It's about what our coaches do with our amazing student athletes. And we're focusing on providing guidance for the student athletes and supporting our coaches and staff and encouraging each other during the challenging times. It's a little bit of a cliche, but it's true that, we're going to get through this together. No one can do this alone, and certainly we can't do it alone. And that's why all of you are so important in what we do. As soon as we received word that athletic competitions were being canceled, obviously, some of you may have heard the story. Our men's basketball team, for example, was literally at the Honda Center about to start their shoot around that day, Thursday morning, I should say, for Thursday evening game. And once we heard that, the first thing we wanted to do was make sure the top priority is the health and well-being of our student athletes, our coaches, and our staff. We've assisted student athletes with travel. We've got international student athletes. We've got student athletes that live across the country. So we want to make sure that we can get them home and be safe with their families. And we've provided many resources since then and guidance. We're adjusting to an online, a virtual world of distance learning and remote training for those student athletes. Right now, we have a skeleton crew of staff who come into the office during the week to perform essential work functions. The bulk of our staff and coaches are working from their homes. For example, today, I think this is my 6th or 7th Zoom call or Zoom function of the day. I still have one more to go after this. So it's been an adjustment for me. I'm not used to the virtual world, but I'm certainly getting there. Our nutrition staff, they've been providing support to help our student athletes focus in order to stay healthy with counseling, and our student athlete development staff, Stephanie Baugh, academics, the Bickerstaff Academic Center. all those folks are doing an amazing job to make sure, as I mentioned, that transition from face-to-face learning to online learning. It sounds really simple, and some of our student athletes have gone through online courses before, but some haven't. So we want to make sure that they're doing what they need to do and that they stay on top of things. And one of the biggest things I think for us is making sure that there's communication and that they're communicating with their faculty as they progress through the semester here. But these coaches, they're amazing. And the support staff across our 19 sports, we're adapting new ways of communicating, Zoom calls. I've jumped on Zoom calls with some of our teams. Coach Knipe had me join his team Zoom call last week, I think it was, and it was really great. And I told the teams and student athletes I've talked to or virtually interfaced with over the last 2 weeks or so, it really makes me feel good to see. It makes me feel really good to see so many of you right now. I think I don't know how you feel, but I'm used to seeing you all. I'm used to being around you, bumping into you, so to speak, and we're doing that a little different now, but it's for the better. I know our strength and conditioning coaches have been counseling. Our student athletes, as I mentioned, we have a few that are on campus still living in the residence halls, but the most of our student athletes are at home with their families. And so they're trying to find ways that comply with social distancing and making good decisions, but still, we have student athletes who are used to going 100 miles an hour, whether it's, in the classroom to practices, to a part-time job, to whatever it is, to suddenly having time on their hands. And so many of them are not used to that. So we want to make sure that we are providing resources for them to stay connected. And as I said, coaches are doing Zoom calls with their teams. They're doing individual Zoom calls. I know some of our coaches have been sending film clips and just keeping our student athletes' minds sharp, talking about ways that we can prepare for next year. There's, again, so many numerous examples of how the staff is dedicated to providing an elite student athlete experience. We want that student athlete experience to be the best one possible. And I also want to emphasize it's also a top priority for us to provide our fans with a means to stay connected with us. We're having to create a new world, so to speak. We've got some exciting things coming up over the next couple of weeks that I think you'll all enjoy, related to what I'm going to call kind of classic games that we'll have links to, so you can click the link and you can see the 2018 men's volleyball national championship, or you can see softball's walk-off win against number 2 Oklahoma. Just things that'll get us through these times where I'm assuming a lot of you are like me, where you're so used to watching sports, it's a little bizarre, but that's life. We get curveballs, and sometimes we're given challenges, and this is a challenge that we'll get through. I know many of you have been able to join our Coaches and Coffee segment. I appreciate Camden moderating those, and our coaches who've been so great with their time to get online and talk about their programs and to let the fans get some questions and get some answers on those things. And we're going to be, again, looking to build off of that. Talk a little bit about some things, and I'm sure some of you have been paying attention to the news that's out there. I'll kind of go over maybe 2 or 3 things I think that are kind of a hot topic right now that affect our department and affect collegiate athletics in a global sense. But one of those things is the decision for the NCAA to grant waivers for all the spring sports athletes to get an additional year of eligibility. All NCAA Division I, and that's a critical piece for Division I athletes in spring sports, will be given that extra season of eligibility to make up for the one that was just canceled due to the coronavirus pandemic. And the loss of the sports season is not one that I ever imagined dealing with. And I've talked to so many of my colleagues over the last couple of weeks, and as I said, there's things you never imagine you'll be thinking about, but halting societal, obviously in the global sense, but even in athletics world, this is all uncharted territory. And in relation to the waiver for the spring sports, we're going to be able to have some of those student athletes come back. Some will graduate. Some, I think, are already transitioning into the mode where they've already kind of accepted some full-time positions, which is great. We always want our student athletes to graduate, and if they're not going to go to play professional sports, that we want them to be great pros in everything else. And that's whether they become a teacher, healthcare professional, financials, whatever it is, they're going to move on. But I think at this point, we're probably looking at about 35 student athletes who have the ability to come back. Our coaches are talking to those student athletes. One of the things I'll share, and I'm sure some have been watching on the D1 ticker, that's an additional cost. So to kind of explain it, every year we graduate student athletes, and the student athletes who are on aid, that aid usually goes to incoming student athletes who take their spot. Well, this year we've got incoming student athletes who will be going on financial aid, scholarships, and we still have this cohort, this group of about 35 who could come back, and the institution, NCAA, has kind of put it in the institution's lap on whether to offer financial aid for those seniors to come back to complete their eligibility. So that comes with a price tag on top of what we're already doing. So we are right now in terms of budgets having some larger discussions. I can imagine most of you have probably seen the news and watched what's going on in the state of California. We're in the same boat as most people. Certainly we're not exempted from having to tighten the belt, be more efficient with what we have. I think oftentimes one of the things we hang our hat on that is so great is we do more with less. And we love that blue collar grit that we talk about all the time, the resilience, but it does come with challenges. I'll also mention right now, and I think many of you have seen this as well, the NCAA Division I Council is going to consider new waiver criteria, which would allow athletes in all sports to compete immediately if they're in good academic standing, not facing some sort of suspension at their original school, and receive a release to transfer. Many of my colleagues that I talk to across the country, other ADs, even other head coaches, I think most of us believe that this waiver criteria will be changed and approved. And we've already seen players ask for releases to transfer. I know one of them that's been a hot topic for us has been men's basketball with Josh Morgan, who is transferring out to USC. I'm not going to comment specifically on that particular transfer, but I do have some comments in general on my feelings towards what the waiver criteria change could lead to. In my opinion, this new rule creates potential issues around tampering with players. I think there's an even larger turnover in rosters that we've seen even recently, but this, I can't even imagine what May is going to look like when this goes through. And then one thing that I worry about is the Power 5 schools, which are your Pac-12s, your Big Tens, and those kind of what I'll call the football schools. I worry that those schools could look to the mid-major schools like ours as kind of a developmental league, kind of like a G League, and the ability to raid our rosters when a need arises on one of their teams. We put a lot of effort into trying to find talent that is kind of maybe hidden talent that kind of sneaks through, and then our coaches work with them. And as you can imagine, when you put that much effort into something and then it leaves, it's difficult, and it's difficult to sustain momentum when you have some critical pieces to the puzzle. At our level, one player can make a really big difference. So I'm curious to see how this is going to work out. As I said, we won't know the vote till May, but I don't see any reason from the people I've talked to in Indianapolis at the NCAA headquarters and to folks who serve on the Division I Council. I think this is going to pass. And the landscape of college athletics, it's not just basketball, but across all the sports, is certainly going to be very different. And that'll create challenges, but that's what we do. I say, I'll either say next guy up or next young woman up. It provides an opportunity. And kind of building upon that, I do want to thank everyone who's invested in our student athletes and coaches and helping us make a difference as we cultivate leaders and champions here on our campus. Today, more than ever, we need that continued investment into the department to compete for championships on the field of competition, in the classroom. Graduate student athletes requires resources. This upcoming year, it's going to be a challenging year from a budget standpoint. And again, I don't have a ton of details on that, but I can tell you that we're gonna see some cuts. We're gonna have to tighten that belt. We're gonna have to figure out a way to do more with less. So those of you who do invest in what we do and the experience for the student athletes, you make more of a difference than you may even realize. So thank you again for all of that. The governor's budget originally came out in January. Typically, the way it works, governor's budget comes out, state legislature comes back. To give you an idea, the state legislature had essentially put almost $200 million on top of what the governor had budgeted for our campus. And right now, we may see most of that, if not all of that, go away. So it's not even just athletics that I'm sitting here kind of lamenting our situation, but it's everyone across this campus in every department that's going to be affected by this. As I mentioned, we have additional scholarship costs if we do offer scholarships for those returning seniors. As I said, there's likely to be cuts to operating budgets. I've talked to our coaches and our staff, and we're looking at ways that we can minimize the impact on student athletes. The ultimate goal is to look for budget savings in areas that are not a direct impact on a student athlete or a program. The last thing we ever want to do is to have to lay off somebody or to cut a program. I mean, that would be almost what I would call the end of times. So that we're going to look to avoid that as best we can. But we do it as a group. And for those of you who, you purchase your season tickets and you make that donation to the Beach Athletic Fund, it really does power. That's the fuel that allows us to compete for championships. And I encourage you and certainly respectfully ask for all of you to continue to support our department as much as you can. I realize everybody is going to be affected in this economy. So certainly everyone's going to have to make tough choices, but we hope that you keep us in mind as you look forward into what the upcoming year looks like for you. I'm excited. We've got some things coming up in May. I'll tease a little bit, but we're going to have a kind of a virtual Beach Athletic Fund event on May 5th, and Camden and the development staff are going to share more about that day coming up. And that's going to be ways that can directly help our student athletes achieve all of those necessary pieces of the puzzle. Camden is graciously put up a few slides that we want to talk about, and some information for those of you who are season ticket holders and donors. This year we launched the Drive to 4900. That is a big piece of our puzzle as we move forward. We're on pace to reach nearly 2,000 members by June 30th. That number would put us ahead of pace to reach the ultimate goal of 4,900 members by July 1st of 2024. So I appreciate the hard work of my staff and all of you who continue to invest with us. And to complete this long-term goal, we do need our members to continue to renew and support those student athletes. And to help the fans, we're providing monthly gift options for donations and monthly payment options for season tickets. The Beach 2021 benefits chart is now posted online at thebeachathleticfund.com. I'll kind of give just maybe 2 or 3 quick highlights to give you a sense of where we are looking forward. Access to the Euclea Suite is going to remain at what we call the partial tuition level of $2,500 a year. Former student athletes that join the varsity club, which starts at $49 or more a year, will be able to access the sandbar for all Walter Pyramid sports and the pavilion at Bull Diamond at Blair Field. And we're going to continue to offer great benefits such as discounted parking and unique student athlete experiences for the Beach Athletic Fund members. And before our spring seasons were cut short due to COVID, Beach Athletics Fund was well ahead on its ticket sales goals. Spring is typically a very strong financial segment of the year for us. And, you know, it's hurt our revenues coming into as we come to fiscal close here. But I encourage you, you know, that while you may not be able to visit us at the Walter Pyramid or in the Barrett Athletic Administration building, you can contact us by calling or texting. Our number is 562-985-4949, or you can email us at beachathleticfund@csulb.edu. But as I close my comments around kind of where we sit here, and we'll take some questions and hopefully have a really fun conversation, I do remain optimistic and energized about the future. I believe that we're going to come back stronger. I believe that together we can continue that proud legacy of beach athletics and have our student athletes reach for the stars in their dreams and empower them to achieve that here at Long Beach State University. You all are part of an amazing dynamic community. You've stepped up to the plate year after year to help make an impact that stood the test of time. And that's one of the greatest things that I get to do, is to interact with all of you and provide some leadership again in the game of life. And we've got great coaches who are going to do that as well, and then also compete for championships. That's one thing that I've always said since day one when I got here, how lucky I was to walk into a situation that has had sustained success for so long. We haven't had to invent a new world in terms of creating a legacy. We haven't had to invent those things. You can go back so many years, to the Tarkanian years and Coach Jim Alero, and I'm not going to be able to rattle off everybody's name, but there is a great tradition here. I got a call the other day from a colleague, and they were kind of asking, well, how's it going here at Long Beach State? And I told them, we've got some challenges, and then I started to share, and I got myself on a roll, and I started talking about our community and the brand that we have here that I feel is very unique. Having worked at 3 mid-major schools, all in California, this is by far the best brand that I could ever hope for as an athletic director. I don't think anybody has a better brand in terms of a university and an athletic department in our world. And again, that's a credit to everybody. the saying goes, it takes a village, right? And it takes everyone pulling on the rope together. And again, we're just very lucky. But my wife Nicole and I, we are just really grateful to be a part of that community. And we're looking forward to being able to connect with all of you in person, hopefully sooner rather than later. But until then, I wish you all to stay healthy and to stay safe. And if there's anything certainly that we can do, we're here for you. And as I like to close, and as we all like to close, with Go Beach. But at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Camden, and we can start maybe some Q&As and hopefully get into some fun here. So Camden, I will let you do your thing.
All right. Thank you, Andy, for your state of the department there. I'm sure that cleared up a lot of questions for a lot that I've seen coming in through the chat bar. So once again, for folks that have joined us late, if you have questions, in order to keep this going and to keep us with a good flow here, we are allowing you to submit questions via the chat function. They come to us and we're able to kind of filter through those so that we don't ask the same ones over and over again, and we don't hear your dogs barking and your kids and everything in the background. So Andy, got one question here for you that's come up several times. How many spring athlete seniors at the beach are we expecting to come back? And then on top of that, what's that going to mean for our budget impact?
Yeah, so great question. We've got about, I think the number was 35 yesterday, the day before. It might have gone down to 33 at this point, but there is a financial impact. And if we did re-award, as I said earlier, and clarify it, we can re-award up to what they received last year. We can't give them any extra award. We can certainly give them less, but if we were to re-award the amount that each of those folks receive this year, next year, we're looking at probably around $250,000 of additional scholarship cost to the department on top of the remainder that we typically award. So if we typically awarded $1 million, I'm making that number up, but if we, we're at $1.25 million, and that's a significant cost to our department. So again, we'll work through that. One of the there's a lot of unknowns, right? I think we're all in this world where when you haven't had to deal with something, you can't look back or call someone up and say, well, how did you do it? What did you do here? We have to find solutions on our own, which we're working towards. And my goal is, I'm kind of, my heart is happy for those student athletes, those seniors, to come back and to be able to close out that final chapter of their career here, collegiate career at Long Beach State. But again, as an athletic director, when I look at the ledger and I see a big chunk of change, and the great part is, again, we've had people already have come to us and said they'd like to participate in a deeper way financially. But we're going to work on that. We want to make sure that, again, when I talk to a recruit next year, that, if Coach Cam, and I'm looking at Coach Cam, and if Coach Cameron brings a recruit to meet with me, that when I say that, we're going to follow through on our commitment to you, that we are going to follow through on our commitment to them. So, and as much as that's a challenge, I've said this to our coaches as well and others, that we're not the only ones going through this. So it's not as though Long Beach State is somehow, in a dark corner. And I've talked to my colleagues across the conference, and everybody's kind of in the same boat of trying to figure out how to cover costs. But that's a great question, and hopefully one we can solve.
So Andy, that you kind of led in right to another question. So folks are wanting to know if you've been talking to other schools in the Big West and what they're talking about doing in terms of bringing student athletes back, seniors. I'm assuming that the question comes from these are our peers and our direct competitors. so folks want to kind of know what's going on across the league.
Yeah, so it's a little hodgepodge. Some have come out early and said that they're not going to award any extra scholarship dollars. They've told coaches, if you want to bring someone back, you certainly can do it. You can award it if it's in your existing scholarship allocation. You can do that. That's a little bit of where we are, but if there's a way to find additional dollars, and some of this could be case by case, and again, if someone was on 0.75 scholarship last year, we could bring them back. We could bring them back at a 0.5, but it's a little bit. People are still trying to figure this out. I think everybody's still wondering about the state budget. I think we're all trying to forecast and guess a little bit on what it is. I've heard some of my colleagues that think it's going to be, 5% cut. I think it's going to be north of that. I think it's probably somewhere between 10 to 20% potentially in terms of a cut, probably more towards that 20% cut. So scholarship dollars are going to be tough to come by, but we do know that scholarship dollars, again, are the fuel by which we compete for championships. We can do everything right. We can have the best facility, but if we do not have talent, it makes it very difficult. So we're in an awkward year here of bringing seniors back, but I don't think there's a consensus in terms of if we looked at all the schools, that 80% of the schools are going to do it one way or the other. I mean, I've seen schools, University of Wisconsin, Barry Alvarez, the athletic director, came out and I believe he flat out said, hey, seniors had their year, they're not coming back. I have a tough time philosophically with that. Financially is a different discussion, but philosophically, we talk about being a family here. We talk about beach family, and that matters greatly to me. And so I want to make sure that we exhaust our options in terms of bringing those folks back.
So Andy, several questions have been coming in of folks wanting to know if the cuts that you anticipate coming are going to be spread across departments and sports, or if some are going to see a little bit more of an impact than others.
It's going to be consistent. You talk about, someone asked me about furloughs, and that topic hasn't been delved into too deeply yet from the CSU system as of yet, but I don't want to harm one program more than it needs to be. For example, we're a broad-based athletic department. We have many of our 19 sports are competing for, at a minimum, a Big West championship. And I don't want to snatch dreams away and penalize a coach or a program more so than another. Certainly, we want to make sure that we can field that team. And the cuts, when I talk about the cuts are ideally as best, and again, this is a fluid situation, but the first cuts we look at are going to be the ones that do not affect the competitiveness. The scholarships, the program itself. Are there things that administratively we can do differently? Are there things that we can do, whether it's packaging things creatively across our campus? But I can tell folks here, our goal, and when I've talked to President Conley, is to focus on those student athletes. And that's the ultimate representation of what I do as an athletic director, what our coaches do as coaches, what our fans do as fans, and donors do as donors, is to make sure that those young men and women have a means to achieve their dreams. So at this point, I think we're looking at across the board, it is probably the most likely scenario.
All right. And then folks have been asking how many, just so they can get a little bit of a context, how many of our student athletes are on full scholarships versus those that are on less than a full scholarship. So you might go into explaining how the different headcount sports and versus equivalencies, et cetera.
So the majority of our student athletes are equivalency sports, which means they're not on full rides. You've got a head count, which means you're either on a full ride or you're a walk-on. Equivalency means I could put you on 100% aid or I could put you on 25% aid. And our sports, for the bulk of them, fall under the equivalency. Our head count sports, men's basketball, women's volleyball, women's tennis, but the bulk of those student athletes, and I think that's a little bit sometimes of maybe this group knows better than the average fan, but the average fan thinks everybody's on a full ride and doesn't have a care in the world, and it's easy street here at Long Beach or whatever institution a student athlete may be at. But for us, we have, if you added up the scholarship limits. For example, men's basketball has a limit of 13 scholarships. Women's have 15 scholarships. If you add up those across the board, we have about 148 scholarships in total that we could provide. We're currently at about 124 scholarships. So we've got a gap. So we've got some programs that are not fully funded scholarship-wise, which again creates that challenge of I've got teams that aren't fully funded, and now I'm trying to also find money to bring seniors back. So that's going to be a difficult discussion, one that we're going to have with our coaches. I know our coaches right now are actively talking to the student athletes who have that option to return, whether they do want to return or not, and then what that might look like. Could that be at the same amount? It could be. Right now, there's no guarantee, though, that we can bring everybody back at the same number. Right now, if you said I had to make a decision, we just don't have the financial means here on April 14th to do that. If there's a way that we can get past that and fund those additional scholarships, that would make myself, our coaches, our president, our staff, everybody very happy. But again, for the bulk of our student athletes, most of them are not on a ton of scholarship money.
So just to add to that, the fundraiser in me needs to add that that is why the Drive to 49 is so important for beach athletics, is we really feel with 4,900 members, we could fully support our entire student athletes in the maximum number of scholarships that is allowed by NCAA rule. So that is why those funds are critical for us to be competitive year in and year out at the beach. Andy, a couple more questions here before we stop, but folks are asking, how does the extra year of eligibility for seniors, how does that affect underclassmen moving forward?
That's going to be, we've got the immediacy of those seniors coming back potentially. The real issue is going to probably be for what I'll call, or who are the juniors in high school right now. That's probably going to be the biggest impact, is when those student athletes arrive on campus. And as we move forward, suddenly you could have, Andy Fee, who thinks, oh, I'm coming in, hey, I'm coming in this fall. And my discussions with my coach, my new coach here at the beach, was I was going to be an integral part of the team. They were, I'd be a big part of the offense or defense, whatever that is. Well, now suddenly that looks a little different, where my playing time or my ability to get on the court or in the field of competition is going to be a little different. So I'm sometimes, I have to be careful with how I phrase this. The NCAA is a wonderful institution, but sometimes I do scratch my head a little bit on how we implement things. And I'm supportive of the concept around the seniors. I was a little surprised that they awarded that extra year of eligibility to the freshmen, sophomores, and juniors currently on our rosters. Because essentially at some point you're going to have a logjam, and it's going to create some issues in recruitment and spots, number of roster spots available. We've got some waivers for next year to allow those seniors to be on the rosters, so we can get by. But I think if you do talk to our coaches, in terms of recruiting, it does change the dynamics. It changes a lot of discussions around, why you were bringing somebody in the class of 2021. Well, that could look a lot different. So Again, we're not the only ones that are potentially going to have to deal with that, but again, this is uncharted territory that we're in, and something I think if you had probably said to a coach ever that this is be a scenario that they would have the opportunity to, with the pluses and minuses, focus on, I don't think a lot of us would ever have thought it would be something on our plate.
Andy, folks are asking about specifically the one-time transfer rule. So are other schools, are other schools able to talk to our student athletes and offer them larger scholarships? We all know that the NBA and other sports have a no tampering. Are colleges allowed to reach out to student athletes on scholarship?
No, there is no means for them to do that unless they've gotten a full release and permission to contact from our university. But I do think we know that, for example, in the world of basketball, you've got the AAU system where you've got these AAU coaches who stay connected to players and stay connected to parents. And, I really mean it. And it's not to say woe is me here as an athletic director, but we're not a developmental league for college basketball or for any college sport. Our goal is to compete on the same level, and you've seen that with who we've beaten over the years and won championships. But this scenario changes things. If you look at scholarships themselves for a headcount sport, and one that offers cost of attendance is calculated by each institution. It's calculated differently. So the cost of attendance at Long Beach State is going to be different than the cost of attendance at UCLA. And if you go on each institution's website, you can find the cost of attendance. Those numbers are public. Those numbers are out there. But that's a carrot that can be dangled in front of somebody. If you transfer to school X, suddenly, the cost of attendance is now $5,000 versus $2,500. So, I hate to say it, but there's no way for us to police it. I don't know if someone's got an idea, or one of my coaches knows how we would possibly do that, because these discussions happen behind the scenes. I don't know what to make of this. I don't know what May is going to look like. Is it going to look like, the first day of free agency and it's just pandemonium with people moving and, asking for releases? But I do think this helps the Power 5 schools more than it certainly helps the mid-majors, because, and to not be flippant, but why would one of our coaches work so hard to develop a freshman and put in that time and that energy just to see them leave for the bigger pool, so to speak? That's difficult, because at our level, one player, again, can make a huge impact. And if I were recruiting freshmen, I think that's where a lot of our coaches in some sports are going to have to really think about who they recruit. Are you recruiting more junior college student athletes? Are you recruiting, from the portal? The portal right now, there are more student athletes in the transfer portal than ever. And it's been like that every single year over the past couple of years. The numbers just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I do worry, as I've said, that, I look at and view college athletics very differently than pro sports. I look at the NBA way different. The WNBA, the NBA is way different than college basketball. And the same goes for other sports. But we're kind of tipping towards what seems to me to be a world of free agency. And, maybe, I don't know, everyone's got a different opinion on it. But if we're going to sit here and say, what do I think college athletics is going to be? Fans could be looking at a very different landscape of what college athletics is over the next few years that is very different than the traditional model that we've seen. And I worry that there's always been a gap. There's always been a gap between the Power 5 schools and a mid-major school, but that gap's just going to increase and get bigger and bigger. And, that's a mid-major athletic director talking to you. But what I'm sharing with you is really what my colleagues, my counterparts in mid-major schools in our conference and other mid-major conferences on the West Coast that I talk to all the time, I think we're all in the same boat.
All right, here we're going to go with one more, and then we'll let you finish up with any closing statements that you want to make. But folks have had several questions come through where they're asking, is there a scenario where athletes may practice or play if school is not in person in the fall?
So I literally was on a Zoom call before this call with on the president's cabinet. I sit on the president's cabinet, and it's an opportunity for us all to kind of put things on the table that are, you know, important to us and that we think is important to the president to consider. And one of those things I brought up today was, what does the fall home events calendar look like? You know, are we playing in front of fans? I mean, I hope we are, obviously. I know all of us are probably in the same thought process there of wanting to be together and celebrating the beach. But one, are we playing in front of empty stands? We did that for the opening round of women's basketball tournament, and Coach Kamen, that was one of the most weird, bizarre environments. I see Coach kind of laughing. I don't even know what to make. I mean, it was like a regular game. I mean, we did intros, we had pregame music, and there was literally nobody in the stands. But if you looked at the court, it looked like a regular game. But as I guess you'd call me a spectator at that game, it was bizarre. And you know, I hope that's not the experience that our student athletes have, is playing before empty stands. You know, all of you, our fans, make a big difference in that environment. But there is a possibility. Now, I do think that we still could compete if we're in a distance learning environment. So if we are still entering fall, you know, the discussion right now is it going to be a hybrid? You know, could we be entering fall 20 in a virtual for the first half of the semester, and then the second half is face-to-face or in person? Is the entire fall going to be virtual? I think, you know, as many experts out there are much smarter than I, you know, it's going to depend on the coronavirus and what, you know, it decides, so to speak, on how we move forward. But our goal is that we have the same environment. Fans come out to Walter Pyramid in August for women's volleyball, or at the George Allen Field for women's soccer. We've got our cross-country programs hopefully competing, and men's water polo. I mean, it's a big deal for us, but, you know, we'll see what happens. And a lot of it, again, is you know, what do things look like in a month? What does it look like in 2 months? You know, is social distancing going to be enough that allows us to come together in groups? I don't know. I mean, just to be really frank, you know, I try to be really forthright with people. I was saying, you know, I don't know, are we selling season tickets with a buffer seat between? You know, I don't know what the Department of Health is going to come out and say. I don't know what the state of California is going to say. What I can tell you is right now we are planning on business as usual. And until we hear that fans won't be able to come or something of that nature, I've got it circled on my calendar for the first home events for those fall sports.
All right, Andy, I'm going to open it up to you for, you know, just some closing remarks. And then I've got a few reminders for folks and a couple announcements, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm really looking forward to this. Again, this is kind of the foray for me into the virtual world of the state of department. But I'd like to continue this and build off of it. Hopefully allow folks to get their questions in, and we'll really get it rolling and dialed in. As I mentioned, we're going to put some things on the Long Beach State athletics website that hopefully some Zoom backgrounds and, you know, again, links to classic games and stuff for the kids to do, and really hopefully is stay connected, because that's one thing I do worry about. You know, we're here together, but it's way different than sitting in a room together. And you know, energy and the vibe, all of those things. I mean, I feel great. You know, I'm looking at a lot of people right now, and it's making me smile because I miss a lot of you and hanging out with all of you. But It is a concern that, I mean, as I said earlier, one of the biggest things for me from my vantage point is making sure that we stay connected, because what you do for us, and we're always asking for things. I mean, I'm honest. We're asking you to come out to a game. We're asking you to buy a season ticket. We're asking you to make a donation. And to me, it's an investment. It's an investment in our young men and women, those future leaders, who one day hopefully won't have to face something like this, but if they did, they would be prepared. And that we could proudly say that that's a Long Beach State alum. That's the Long Beach State alum leading the Department of Public Health, or our mayor, who is an alum right now, that we can point to and say that's our alum, that's our mayor. But really, everything that you do for us, I know I'm repeating myself, but what we do isn't possible. As I said, I had that Zoom call before this one with the president's cabinet, and the president and I were chit-chatting back and forth, and we were just reminiscing about some of the games of last year, and we both kind of said, well, we got to figure out a way that we all come back together in August and through the year to celebrate what this process is, because again, it's more than just sports. We're all super competitive. We all want to win. We all want to win championships. But as our coaches always say, and I echo everything they say, our student athletes come here, and it's a small window. It's 4 to 5 years, and 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds are making decisions to go to a university and spend those 4 or 5 years. But the reality is, what they learn over those 4 to 5 years prepares them for the rest of their life, and hopefully that's a long life. Hopefully, they're living to their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And what we do here may not seem as consequential as it turns out to be. Sometimes we don't know what the future holds. We certainly always want to feel good. I always feel great. I get to sit on the dais during graduation and walk those student athletes kind of go by and give them a fist bump, and they get to be with President Conley and get their diploma. But ultimately, that's what this is all about. It's about cultivating leaders and champions. And I'm so happy and so glad that all of you are here with all of us. When I talk about pulling on the rope, I'm again looking across the faces here in the crowd, so to speak. And I know how hard you all pull on the rope for us. And I'm eternally grateful for that. I know we've got a number of coaches here in attendance today, and I know they feel the same way. And I just really look forward to the day that, I guess it's fist bumps or elbow bumps from now on, but to be with all of you. So with that, kind of a go Beach and a thank you. And I know Camden's got some details to talk with all of you, but I'm looking forward to the next one of these. We'll get information out again, and be well, be safe, and go Beach.
All right, Andy, thank you very much for that. Just a few housekeeping measures and some other questions that I saw come through here at the end. So we are, as the Beach Athletic Fund, going to be starting, a big push here towards the end of the year. So for those of you that were asking questions about supporting the senior athletes and keeping those scholarships going, so that we can keep everybody here and be competitive, that information is coming soon. We do our Coaches and Coffee every Monday. It's a similar setup just as this. We've got a coach that'll come up. We haven't quite landed on our lucky or unlucky coach, however you want to see it, for Monday at 9:30. And if you missed any of this, it will be available on YouTube tomorrow. It's going to take me a little bit to edit and get it all set up, but it'll be available tomorrow on YouTube, and we'll send that to your email as well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming and for supporting the Beach, and we look forward to seeing you as soon as we can. Go Beach.
Thank you, everybody. Go Beach.